Why did I never have heard about core punk? I mean, this looks like something. I mean, looking at the character, looks like something I would play, or at least watch things about. So let's take a look at core punk from 1 month ago.
Okay, what up, friendos? Welcome back. And it's another day as an MMO fan. You wake up, what's going to happen today? Is there going to be a new game announced? Is there going to be some good news? No, because I like MMORPGs. So instead, which project's been cancelled? Which MMO's been shut down? Who's been scammed? Which development studios just laid off most of their staff? It's just another day, right? And in this case, we're talking about core punk, which I've not covered on any of my channels for a long time for a reason, which is going to play a factor into this.
Wait, for a long time?
Because, one, I don't follow, like, I have no interest in following long development cycles for games anymore. I'll cover it when it's announced. I'll cover it if anything major happens, including...
Which is good, because, damn, it's so devastating to see a game is being announced and then you follow its development, and then it never comes out, or turns out to be a scam, which can be, both things can be true. Ashes of Creation.
In any drama, and then I'll cover it when it's like playable, and then eventually when it fully releases. So with core punk, I was never going to cover all the updates or anything because I have no interest, but I wasn't going to cover the drama either, for one specific reason, and that is that this is a Ukrainian development studio. Oh. So obviously, once this game was on my radar, and I was like, okay, cool, I'm looking forward to this. Hopefully it turns out well. It looks pretty interesting. It's going to be a niche game, but, you know, I'm part of the niche that this is intended for. I'm waiting.
Niche games can work if you focus your development and make the thing properly, and don't spend too much money on a game and expect it to be, oh, I wanted to say Fortnite-like success, but Fortnite lost $500 million. And we're gonna talk about that later.
And then Russia invades Ukraine, and at that point, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to cover any of the negatives or drama or anything around the game, because they've already had a rough enough time as it is, trying to relocate and probably secure funding and make sure everyone's okay, and then developing a game while your family's going through a literal war. There's plenty of other games that I can talk about that's having drama where people don't have this going on. So I just gave them a pass. Yes. And I was just like, you know, I'll come back to it when there's something playable. And then here we are today. Now we have to cover it because they've apparently just laid off a lot of staff. And this post, there's information coming from the Discord, from the community manager, that contradicts this a little bit. Of course. We don't exactly know the scenario right now. If you worked here and you've been laid off, feel free to reach out. Would appreciate if you did. Let me know your story. Let me know what happened. Let me know the extent of this so that the public knows. But this post reads, "Hi guys, unfortunately, almost all of my colleagues were laid off, including me. Wow. Looking for a new job, would be grateful for any help. Specialize in making stylized characters and props, from sculpting to textures. Here are some examples of my work. Some of them I created myself from scratch, and some of them I worked as a texture artist, only more works in my portfolio." So this has obviously immediately sparked a discussion. Is core punk dead? And yes, according to the Discord server,
the thing is, if something like that happens to a game studio and they are working on a game, the game is dead. Something like that does not happen, and then the game is doing well. It just doesn't happen. Never happened before.
Where people started discussing this immediately. The community manager, which I don't know whether or not this is a person who works at the studio and is there and is speaking on behalf of the studio, but it doesn't sound like they are. They said, quote, "It's just more of the same situation as far as I'm aware. Currently at a point where a new round of funding is coming in currently, so it was considered a good point to reevaluate business strategy / structure. so as to try and make sure said funding is properly used. As far as I'm told, the last several months of patches and content were done by around 20% of the people in the company, the core team. That doesn't make a great deal of sense. None of the
Wait. I tell me, wait. 20% of the people in the company actually working on the game. What is the rest doing? If I understand this correctly. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we get clarification. I hope so.
This makes a great deal of sense, honestly. But it continues. So instead of spending more of this new round of funding in keeping non-essential people, it is meant to be used to increase production, to outsource more production, and some AI pipelines for day-to-day work. As far as I'm aware, the questions about this were seen in the Q&A and should be getting an answer. In short, / the main point, the core team that has been working on the game from the beginning has always been the core of the project. 90% of them are still here. The other 10% decided to leave due to their own life plans, and this was a good time to exit the project. Now, none of this makes sense, right?
This sounds sketchy AF. This sounds really, really sketchy. What is even going on? Why is the majority of the work done by 20% of the people working at the company? That sounds really, really bad. That sounds like a typical American company where you have 80% of the people working at the company are management. This sounds really bad.
Right? And obviously, in the world currently, you're not allowed to use AI, even though we know either now or in the very near future, a large percentage of studios are going to use some form of AI in their workflow. Maybe it's not going to be generative AI. Maybe it's not going to be the thing you specifically dislike. We just know that this is going to happen. But to talk about using it at this point is a very bad idea. People are going to react incredibly negative to it because
people are retarded. Using some AI to straighten out the workflow to make some of the tedious work easier, faster, being done by AI, instead of a person that then can do something that's more important, that's a good thing. If it even is AI and not machine learning, which is two completely different things, but machine learning is being called AI so they get funding. Keep that in mind. There's a lot of BS going on.
It sounds like when you say we've just laid off a lot of people, and according to this person, most people, and your response is, oh, actually it's okay because we're going to be using more AI. That sounds fucking awful. Because if you're laying off artists to then say, oh, AI, it doesn't inspire anyone with confidence.
It didn't say they're laying off artists. That there's one artist that we know of. The thing is that they laid off most of the people, which, if I read this, is completely fine because only 20% of the people are actually doing work on a game. So why have 80% of the people even there? It's the same situation that we had with Twitter. Where Elon came in, he fired 80% of the people and the company ran fine.
Even if you just mean it's going to be a little bit here and there of something that isn't generative and something that isn't going to replace real people making real things. I am of the opinion, always have been of the opinion on pretty much every aspect where you can go into like the ethics of whatever. If you make something that's good enough, most people will find a way to look past it. If you can make something people feel is great, they're not going to care if you use AI. Sure, some people will, but obviously at the stage where you're at now, where the game's not finished and the news is negative, mentioning this is just a bad idea. That being said, when you read the rest of this communication, which again I don't think this is from like an official okay, let's put this out as a press release. This is just from a guy. The idea that there can be such a disconnect between, oh, almost all my colleagues were laid off, to, oh, it's actually fine and the core are still developing the game and everything's going to be okay and we're actually getting more money. This these two things cannot be true. Also, the idea that when you're talking about layoffs, you can also say people decided to exit the project, they're not the same thing. And
True.
Obviously, we know if you're going to lay off a bunch of people that were already built into the workflow of your company, you're doing it for financial reasons, unless you just kept them on this whole time till you got to a point of layoffs and then decided, oh yeah, we'll just lay off a bunch of people now instead of.
No. They said that 20% of the people are the core of the company and they are doing basically the entire work. I think that he's misunderstanding things. Well, I'm misunderstanding things. I mean, both get. One of these things is true. We will see.
Getting rid of underperformers or something as you discover they were underperformers, which would mean you're not running the business very well. There's not really a lot of ways you can logically spin layoffs other than a financial concern. And when your response is basically, oh, we're getting more money, so we decided to lay off a bunch of people, it does sound like one of those scenarios where the water falling on my face is kind of warm and it might be piss. Why for months of releasing updates was only 20% of your development studio actually part of those updates, according to this? There's just a lot of questions about this that really don't make any sense whatsoever. And again, I've tried to have the ultimate goodwill with not talking about Core Punk because I knew the game wasn't doing incredibly well. I know this game doesn't have a lot of players on it, but there are.
Wait, the game's out? Wait, what? Is it on Steam? Core Punk max 10 followers. Okay. How about the playtest? All-time peak 14 months ago, 1 person. Okay. Let's just continue watching the video, I guess.
Are just a lot of things about this that don't make sense, and eventually once a game is having this many problems, regardless of whether or not they've had a really rough time, which there are people in the MMO subreddit, by the way, saying crazy shit like, oh, the war was, it started 4 years ago, they don't have that excuse anymore. Yeah, they do. Their country is still being invaded. Friends, family is still at constant risk.
Yeah.
Like, they probably lost loved ones. They probably had to vacate homes and be away from family that are then at risk.
The person who said that is so dumb, so stupid. Obviously doesn't know what war is. Very obviously doesn't know. Completely stupid.
I don't think it's reasonable to sit from a place of safety and be like, yeah, actually, no, this is not a factor whatsoever. This is one of the circumstances that you absolutely do give people leeway, where their project that could have been a success previously is way more likely to fail than pretty much anything else going on. That being said, It is always going to be weird to me if they are having financial problems to have never released on Steam. Because there is this handy dandy feature on Steam called...
So they didn't release on Steam? Oh, okay. I'm confused here.
Early access, where you can launch a game into early access and get money for an unfinished product, which is literally what they already do with the game being, in an alpha state. You can go on their website and you can...
Oh my Jesus. This here might get me demonetized. Not that I'm monetized, but it might be. But overall, this looks like something that I would actually play. Just looking at the art, this looks like something I would play. Because it's very obviously not Western. I mean, the faces and the drawing, the general art style is, but this is very obviously not Western. This is not Western because the women are attractive. The women are attractive, the men are manly. It's not Western. So it's appealing to people. Yes, this looks nice, especially this one here, Jesus.
Buy early access packs and things like that. So clearly they're comfortable selling packs for the unfinished game. But there is a quote from them saying from a long time ago of why they wouldn't release on Steam. And they said, this was from 2020. So obviously a lot changes in that time. They said, right now we are focusing on our launcher. It might change, but Steam isn't the best place for MMO releases. Sounds weird, but somehow it is. Haven't seen a successful MMO launch on Steam yet. I mean, despite the fact that obviously Ashes of Creation completely exploded in a fiery ball of mayhem that nobody can look away from because it's so fucking glorious.
Yeah.
The glorious Ashes of Creation community got to witness a glorious fucking explosion, and it's gonna be burning for years till we figure out everything that happened. But despite that, the game still made a good chunk of money. The game still made millions of dollars and had a bunch of players on it. And would have been considered a successful MMO launch. And there's a bunch of successful MMOs on Steam. So I think that's fucking nonsense, personally. The only reason...
Most likely it's just money. It's just money. They just want all the money. Not just 70%.
To not launch on Steam is because you don't want to risk the future of your company based on whether you get like really bad negative reviews and people are looking at the Steam chart numbers and they're like, oh,
that is very, very possible. Yes, very, very possible.
I don't want to get into the game because the objective reality of how many people are playing. But obviously, if it does turn out that Core Punk needed the money, you would have thought they'd have at least given that a shot. But obviously, you also run the risk of if you do know you're running out of money and you release on Steam, and then you don't get the desired outcome, and then you run out of money, people are going to call you scammers. The only other thing is if you don't want to give Steam the 30%, but it's like, would you rather give somebody 30% of something, or you keep 100% of nothing, right? It seems pretty common sense to me if your game's in this position. But who knows? You know, maybe there's like some contractual thing or some actual reason they can't release on Steam. Either way, this is sad. And it's sad for a number of reasons. One, because I was always going to be rooting for a studio that had such a difficulty due to the circumstances that are completely outside of their control to come through that period and release something successful in spite of what was going on. But also because obviously every time we get really bad news like this, and this isn't to say Core Punk's totally done, but this is not a good sign, no matter how somebody in the community manager role wants to try to spin it. Layoffs are never a good thing. It's never a positive. Like, oh yeah, guys, now we can really develop the game. Now that we fired these people and might outsource to people who haven't worked on the game for years, so they need to be brought up to speed. Cheaper labor people usually, and we'll use AI. These are not good things. Like, there is nothing you can do to spin this as some kind of positive. But also because obviously the MMO genre, every time this happens, is just one less thing, and it's also other people invested in this company with the idea that this thing was going to be a successful product in the future. And this is another group of investors, whoever they are, that are then going to look at the games industry and more specifically the MMO genre and say, nah, actually, fuck that. It was a massive risk. It was massive gambling. It didn't pay off. And look at all these other things that didn't pay off in the MMO genre. And that's just going to continue to feed into the whole situation we've got now, where no motherfucker is putting money into the games industry and certainly not into the MMO genre, which is one that I've loved for a very long time. So that sucks. I really hope that this isn't the end of Core Punk, but you are never going to convince
Do you see this? This looks nice.
Me that doing a big round of layoffs.
I like the art style. I like that. Wait, what? They are doing the exact opposite of Blizzard. You see this here? The exact opposite of Blizzard. And that's why how you know it's not a Western game. Yeah, this is... I like this. This looks good. My guess would be that this is actually a housing thing. I guess. I don't know, but it's a guess.
Where people are comfortable saying the majority of the people, the majority of my colleagues were laid off, is going to result in like a healthier game long term or something that already wasn't doing super well because there's hardly any people playing this game according to the Discord, is suddenly going to get more popular, earn more money, and get to release fast.
Wait. Didn't Asmongold play this game? I think Asmongold played this game.
As a better product. based on losing, you know, a bunch
Yes,
of
he
people
did.
that were working there. That being said, if you did work at this company and you've been laid off, or if you're still working there and you want to have a conversation, give me some insight on what's going on, of course, you will be kept completely anonymous. Just reach out on any of the social media linked below. And for the rest of you, thanks for watching as always. Check GamerSups out. 20% discount is still going on right now using my code. And also, you can support me on Patreon if you want to. Give me some money. You get absolutely nothing in return. But yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Stay safe. Peace.
Yeah, this is...
Me on Patreon if you want to. Give me some...
I mean, this is very... The view is very obviously from... the view angle is from League of Legends, you know, MOBA, which is not bad. But they literally just one-to-one copy that with health and, I guess, shield, which is fine, which is completely fine. Now, what I wanna go is, did Asmongold actually play this game? Did he? Why did I go here? I could have searched it up immediately. He did 1 year ago. He tried it out 1 year ago.
We have a new game. I don't know what this is going to be like. We're going to try it out. We're going to see what happens.
What did he say at the end?
Casual
Oh my
systems.
god. Did you see the art? That's why when you know the game is actually not bad. Wait. Is this really the game? Wait. I was thinking of a different game. The game that I was thinking of was 3D, and he didn't like it.
To be honest. Then you don't want to reverse mouse click and options.
My
So, yeah.
strength knows no bounds.
That's what I think. The clicks are unbindable in some games. Yeah.
So what is he thinking?
I think a game like this has a lot of potential.
Would you?
And if it's not designed the way Lost Ark is. But I'll tell you this. For isometric games like this, Lost Ark's combat should be the... Lost Ark is what Elden Ring is for these games.
Okay.
Like, if a game can be as good as Lost Ark, then it wins. That's what I think. Like, Lost Ark is the best version of it. Any dungeons? I'm not sure yet.
So we are at that point. He thought it had potential, but they obviously have problems. Sucks. But yeah, it's... The thing is, would I play a game like that? I mean, I've said I would because of the art, you know? the very, very specific art. But would I play this? I don't know. I mean, the thing is, I'm basically I already play free live service games regularly. There's not enough time for me for more. There just isn't. I mean, I can try it out, but man, it's really hard. And that's basically when where we go for the thing for the main thing today. How is the live service? How are live service games doing? Oh boy, not good.